We will start with a short insight into the Danish market, and then we're going to dive into the American market and hear some very interesting and inspiring cases from some of the companies from our great speakers, which you see now here in front of you. Great. But first of all, a small insight to the Danish ecosystem and market. Made in Denmark, it is a brand itself, and it is that because it reflects quality and safety and high level of innovation. And in Denmark, we are actually a very small country, 5.7 million inhabitants, but the food production we have, it feeds 15 million people around the world. So we can do something here in Denmark, and it's a very interesting sector. And how do we do this? The key is definitely collaboration. And collaboration has been a major factor for all the innovations and food development there has been over the last many, many years. It started already back in the days when the collaboration for the dairy industry took place, which is today the very known and global brand Arla Foods, which you probably all of you know. But this is definitely the key to many of the things we're doing, that we can work together with the entire value chain, with the companies, the universities, the researchers, the public authorities. This is, for instance, how salmonella got detected in poultry. So we are, of course, very grateful for this innovative way we are working in Denmark with collaboration as key. Collaboration is also a very strong driver when it comes to new food products, growth and innovation, and that is the key of Food and Biocluster Denmark, where I have my daily day. And for the last 3 years, I have been working on different innovation activities for companies such as yourself, for creating new access to funding, facilitating new project opportunities, and strengthening the relationships between different very strong ecosystems around the world to support this innovative way of working. And we're looking into these 3 drivers for innovation when it comes from our side, and the plant-based agenda is definitely a part of all of them, you can say. Food and Biocluster Denmark, we run 3 incubators in Denmark, and we have more than 100 events every year and facilitate projects for more than 100 million euros. And we are the cluster where it's a membership organization where we give access to one-on-one services, networking groups, funding, inspirational events, company missions, etc., to different very interesting ecosystems around the world. So it is definitely the center for food innovation here in Denmark, but it's also very interesting to have our international collaboration partners very close to us. And we have around 300 members in the cluster. Maybe some of you recognize the logos here, maybe it's your own, or at least you know some of them. So everything from very large companies to startups, everything in between, and authorities and knowledge institutions. All of them is someone who is interested in doing more food innovation and see growth in this sector. And what we also follow here is trends, and trends are developing all the time. Maybe some of you remember these ones, the pause fishes on TV when you were waiting for this next program to go on. But today we have Michelin chefs that is facilitated by robots, so you don't even need the people. And of course, I believe you need the people, but a lot of things can be done with technology, and it's moving very, very fast. And before COVID-19, this app was, how can you say, groundbreaking technology. It's called Kry, and it's a Swedish app where you can talk with your doctor on your telephone. Of course, now this pandemic can also do good things, because I think a lot of countries in the medical sector has bumped this up and is offering the service to their clients. It's just to say there's a lot of things happening in technology in our world and in this sector. And of course, also in the food sector. And today we're talking about plant-based proteins, alternative proteins, and there is a great potential. Alternative proteins could be 22% of the overall protein market by 2035 is predicted by Boston Consulting Group in this new report that just came out. And this is of course supported by that there is some regulations being done, and there's some radical, you could say, technical step changes being made, which you can see here. And there is a great potential for these alternative protein sources. It can definitely be a solution to some of the global challenges we have, and we're all aware of them. And it's a very large market. If you just have a look here, just the dairy alternative global value is a $36 billion US market. And you can look all around here, some of the examples I brought in, and you can see there's a lot of potential here. So of course we have to look, or I believe we have to look also at some alternative protein sources, because we will be in need of finding new ways for the things we are doing today. And I will just share with you some of the examples for some of our members here in Denmark. We have this company called Enorm. They are producing a mealworm snack for the consumers to eat. And they also have this very large production of black soldier flies that they currently is only producing for feed, but they are looking into what can you do in the insect market, which is also quite interesting. There's a lot going on in legumes in Denmark, especially how can you create this, integrate either hybrid or fully legume-based food products. Arla Foods has also created an oat drink. So even the large dairy companies, as the example is here, is also looking in alternative ways. KMC, their main business is potato starch, and they have now expanded their business to now also creating potato protein from their product portfolio, which is a great new protein source that is used a lot here in Denmark. And Naturem Bioscience, they're looking into microalgae. How can they create microalgae protein, and how can they do this in a new way where they change a little bit in the color of the product so they get a wanted product. Yes. So that was some specific examples here from the Danish market. But the challenge you can say here in Denmark is that the consumers are not impressed. This consumer survey got created last year and says 80% are not satisfied, they can say, or they mean that the products they tried, the plant-based products they tried, did not meet their expectations. And for instance, these product categories was mainly the plant-based meat, cheese, and drinks. And the main reasons behind this was taste and consistency of these food products. And you can say that other things or more reasonings behind was the habits and social context, that they simply don't really know what to do with these products or eating more plant-based. So we have a great potential here, but we also have some consumers that want more than what they can have today. And if you look overall on the Danish consumers, and I'm sorry for some of these facts being in Danish, it asks about in what categories do the Danes expect to change their habits in consuming food products over the next 12 months, where you can see the first two, that's pork and beef, that they expect that to go down. Where the number 3 and number 4, that is chicken and fish, that the Danes expect their consumption to rise in these categories. So that is, of course, interesting to see, but also from a sustainability perspective, that it's going the right way, and the Danes are more and more aware of what they eat and how that is affecting the climate. But we still have some challenges within these plant-based food products, especially the sensorial issues, the looks of it, the consistency, the taste of these food products. We need to work on that. There's something about the bioaccessibility. Maybe there's a high protein content in these alternatives, but if you cannot digest it, if you cannot absorb the protein, then it's maybe not so much worth, and that's something we're very aware of. Production cost also play a major factor here, because it's not everyone who have the production facility. And then every time there's a new source, it could be potato protein or microalgae protein or hemp protein, the individual company feel like they have to build up the entire value chain themselves. And of course, no one can afford that. So we need to find smarter ways to do this. Of course, the consumers, that 80% that are not impressed, we of course need to do something about that, because we need to give the consumers a greater and a better experience of these plant-based food products. And there is still some regulatory that we have to be very much aware of. But these are some of the challenges we still see here in Denmark. And I'm sure, and I'm very eager and interested to hear from some of our American speakers to get some insights from the American market, because I'm sure we can learn a lot from you guys on some of the things you have done and some of the journeys that you have already been on. So that was the insights I would share with you from the Danish side. And now I'm just very eager to dive more into to the American market. And of course, you're always welcome to contact me if you need any more inputs or insights on some of these companies or these insights. And after today's session, you're also very welcome to reach out if you want to book a one-on-one meeting with one of the speakers we have with us today. And then I just want to remind you that you can ask questions in the chat for the presenters, and you're of course also welcome to ask me a question if you have one, and then I will answer it out in the chat function. And then I would just like to dive right into the American market, I would say, and I will give the word to Zach Weston from the Good Food Institute, who will share some insights on the market potential, what's going on the American market, what's developing, and in what order and what pace, so that we here from Denmark can get some great insights. So Zach, the digital floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this overview of the American alternative protein food market. I'll be sharing just a portion of my slides today, just for the sake of time, but welcome to hopefully have a chance to share those slides later and step through everything later if you're interested in what I will be talking about today. I work for the Good Food Institute, which is a nonprofit think tank that's devoted to supporting what we call alternative proteins, and hopefully a term that's familiar to many of you. For us, this means these three production modalities. We focus on plant-based proteins, like plant-based meat burgers, for example, fermentation as a technology, so using microorganisms, or in some cases plants, as hosts of and little biofactories to produce proteins, or as a way to consume whole cell biomass such as fungi or mushrooms or algae, those sorts of foods, and then cultivated or cell culture meat technology. And together we see these technologies working together in symbiotic ways to drive forward a really powerful alternative protein industry that can offer sensory and price competition with traditional animal protein, while still existing together and meeting different consumer needs. What we've seen over the past several years is that US consumers have responded fairly well to plant-based foods that are direct replacements or competitors to animal-based meat, egg, and dairy products, including over the course of 2020, 27% growth year over year, to now reach a $7 billion per year category. And this is, of course, some of this growth was accelerated by the pandemic and the rise of pantry loading as consumers went out to eat a lot less over the past year, but still very impressive growth numbers for the industry overall. Plant-based milk, things like soy milk, almond milk, those sorts of beverages are the largest category, and have had strong share growth over the past couple of decades. Other plant-based dairy is catching up, and plant-based meat is growing very aggressively, really strong growth over the past year. And that's part of what makes us optimistic about the future of plant-based meat, is just that the plant-based history of plant-based dairy in the United States has shown that consumers are willing to gravitate towards alternatives or integrate them in their diets in a rotation. And we fully expect that plant-based meat can achieve similar market share. Currently, plant-based milk has about 14% market share of US retail fluid milk sales. There's a lot of momentum around this. There's a really large increase in the number of consumers who have tried plant-based meat over the past year. So even in the midst of the pandemic, consumers were willing to try something new, and a lot of them decided to trial plant-based meats. But that said, there still remain many consumers who don't regularly purchase or haven't tried these products. A lot of what's driving this in the United States, as we've seen in a lot of other global geographies is the vast majority of consumers purchasing plant-based meat are also purchasing animal-based meat. So 98% are purchasing both, but there's still, as I mentioned, a large number, almost 80% of animal-based meat buyers who are not regular buyers of plant-based meat. So there's still a fairly large opportunity to reach that market segment. There's been a real explosion of innovation and a number of startups entering this space, along with a lot of established CPG and food service manufacturing companies. What's also been very notable about the rise of plant-based in the US has been the participation of large established animal protein companies. Most, if not all of the largest animal meat companies, for example, have either launched a plant-based meat product line, or they have invested in a plant-based or alternative protein meat company, or done both. So it's very much been participated in both by challenger brands as well as the incumbent established industry. When we ask consumers what matters about these products to them, why they're eating more of them, health is consistently cited as number one, along with mentioning taste and adding variety, and usually environmental impacts, at least for and sustainability concerns for US consumers, tend to rank somewhat lower in terms of fundamental drivers. There is a perception in the US amongst consumers that plant-based meats are healthier than animal meat, even with a much longer ingredient label. More consumers think that just when looking at the nutrition facts panel, which is our regulatorily standardized labeling system, that plant-based meat is healthier. And even when you show the ingredient list, it still is consistently the case that consumers view plant-based meat as superior to, from a health standpoint, animal-based meat. So there's certainly an interest in making cleaner labels and having a shorter list of ingredients. But for now, consumers are comfortable with where those are and still have a very strong health halo associated with plant-based meats. That said, probably very similar to a lot of Danish consumers, the biggest challenges and complaints that consumers have are in the areas of taste and price. So that's the innovation gaps that we most want to see closed over the next couple of years. A lot of that we think is going to come from diversifying both the production and processing methods that are used, as well as pursuing a more biodiverse set of ingredients. Right now, a lot of the existing largest brands or best-selling brands in the US are heavily reliant on soy and wheat as their protein sources, but we're starting to see other protein sources emerge, such as pea protein, and we're really excited over the next few years and decades as the industry can pursue trying a lot more different types of plant proteins. It seems very likely that there are plants or maybe even protein sources from the microbial kingdom, from fungi or algae, that represent really strong functional and sensory advantages, as well as hopefully improving the sustainability footprint and lowering the cost of these products. So we're really excited to see innovations exploring that area. I have a few more additional stats in my slides you're welcome to review later, and just the growth of the market, but I'll go ahead and end there and we can pick up the conversation in the Q&A section later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zach, for enlightening us about the plant-based market in the US. I'm quickly going to introduce David, who's going to dive into a company case. So over to you, David.
Thank you very much. Just going to share my screen with a presentation. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Yes. Looks lovely.
And I'm going to go full screen on it. Let me know if it, there you go. Okay, you all can see it. Perfect. So I'm going to speak a little bit about Ocean Hugger Foods just for some clarity. I recently sold the company, and so I am not actively the chief executive officer anymore, but I'm still the shareholder and still very involved in the company, especially as it's transitioning to the new leadership. But today I'm consulting, investing, and also own and operate a consumer insights firm, helping to study what consumers think of plant-based products. So as a little background, Ocean Hugger Foods makes plant-based seafood alternatives that focus on whole vegetables as the core ingredients. And we are focused on making products that replace the most unsustainable and overfished populations of ocean animals. The background of the company is that a number of years ago, my co-founder, certified master chef, James Corwell, was in Japan, and he visited a place called the Tsukiji Fish Market. It's the largest fish market in the world, and he witnessed what for many people is first a feat of incredible scale and unbelievable human ingenuity in the ability to fish so extensively. Every single day in this market in Japan, 7 days a week for the last 50 years, they sell 4 million pounds of tuna every single day. And at first he was in awe at how impressive that was. And then he realized what a devastating reality that is, that the oceans just simply cannot keep up. Over 80% of global fisheries are at or beyond capacity, and the oceans just can't keep up. So he decided that he wanted to use his culinary talents to address this problem while protecting and celebrating the foods that people love. So this speaks a little bit about the problems in our seafood system. I will go quickly through this because Zach has spoken about it, but in the US in particular, we have a very large population of people who are looking to eat plant-based some of the time, and that is driving huge growth. But seafood is one category that really has not seen as much innovation, though it's really coming on strong now, as some other categories where you have many, many companies. You know, everybody's talking about seafood now, but it's still only 10 or fewer companies in the world that are really accelerating this space. Ocean Hugger has actually paused distribution and operations temporarily because of COVID. When we launched, we quickly became the largest and fastest growing plant-based seafood company in the world, growing at an astronomical rate, but we were 100% selling into food service. And so when COVID hit, we had to pivot. We closed the company temporarily, repositioned it for fast-moving consumable goods, and have sold it to relaunch later this year. But it's a category that is still has so much opportunity. Seafood is certainly the smallest of all the plant-based categories, but a huge growth rate. So some of the things that we have as compelling opportunities, our products were first to market in terms of replacing the raw seafoods that we see in sushi or poke or ceviche or carpaccio or other kinds of products. We have a now patented process for taking whole vegetables and giving them a texture that gives the meaty fattiness that you want from delicious high-fat raw fish. It's a huge global opportunity, and we use the simplest of ingredients. And unlike a lot of plant protein products, it's actually extraordinarily affordable and actually cheaper than the products we're replacing. So here you see a couple of the products that we initially launched. Our first product is called Ahimi. Ahi for tuna, and mi in Japanese means the spirit of, so the spirit of tuna. That's the product on the bottom here. It is made of tomatoes, and the one on the top replaces unagi or freshwater eel, which is the most unsustainable of all seafood items because the fish are harvested prior to reproductive age and then farmed for the rest of their lives, and they can't reproduce in the farms. And so every single eel, freshwater eel that is being harvested or killed for food is the last of its lineage, and that's a really big problem. They also can't farm them from birth because they haven't been able to figure out how to hatch them there. So that's why we decided to disrupt these two products. Here you can see our third product, a carrot-based alternative to salmon. We also have whole lump crab, now crab cakes, surimi, which is imitation crab, but made from whitefish, and a number of other products coming out this year. So just some sense of kind of the distribution. This is very US specific, but Ocean Hugger successfully sold in US, Canada, and will be again soon. US, Canada, Mexico, Caribbean, and actually had deals to launch in 8 of the largest 10 retailers in Europe, which we'll be reestablishing once we relaunch. And we sold in thousands and thousands of restaurants and retail environments in their prepared sushi sections across the US and Canada. Really fantastic traction. We got some great feedback from the top food critics in the country. The New York Times food critic tasted it and said she couldn't tell the difference between $40 a pound raw tuna and our stuff, which was very, very exciting. We manufacture in Mexico, Turkey, and Thailand in order to meet the global demand for our products, and we are selling once we relaunch all over the world. And we have a strategic investor among our many investors, about 30 of them. We have a strategic investor that is one of the largest Japanese foods distribution companies in the world, with operations in 40 countries, including in Scandinavia, that is committed to distributing our products. Here's a bit of our team. And that's it. So I'm happy to answer any questions about Ocean Hugger and the experience of being a startup, some of the challenges we face with COVID and everything else, and also speak about some of what I've learned from consumer insights or the investments I make in the space. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you so much, David. Just a quick comment. I recently watched Seaspiracy on Netflix, so we are very grateful for companies like yours, or previously yours, in this area and offering plant-based options. Now I'm quickly gonna introduce Kritika, who's gonna talk a bit more about egg-free eggs products. So over to you, Kritika.
Thank you so much. And thank you as well, Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for giving us this opportunity. Really excited to be able to share the journey Clara Foods has taken. Just going to share my screen. Are you all able to see? Okay, yeah, super, thank you. Clara Foods, as you know, is a biotechnology startup company, and we are based in San Francisco, California. And it was started by our CEO, Arturo Elizondo, along with Dr. David Anshel, more than 6 years ago. Over the last few years, we've been actually doing a lot of R&D work and scale-up work. And our main focus is to use precision fermentation to produce animal proteins without the animal. And down the line, the main vision and mission is to build a healthier, more efficient, sustainable global food system. Our team comprises of leaders and veterans in the field who have actually worked in many different global companies, many of which you will be able to recognize here. And they bring their collective insights and expertise to advance our mission. So where did it all start? If you look at the market opportunity for even egg proteins, it's a massive market. It's around $200 billion US dollars. And Clara Foods realized that using the technology and the scale-up opportunity, we would be able to actually make the animal proteins that are identical to the very animal protein made by nature, but also be able to leverage the high functionality of each of those individual proteins that we can actually make using this technology. We also realize that if you can scale it up well enough, then you can actually match in price the current pricing for animal proteins. And down the line, with the increased scale, we may even be able to price it at a cost lower than the animal proteins themselves. And also, by the way that the technology works, there's a lot of opportunity to reduce water usage, greenhouse gases, and really make the proteins in a more sustainable fashion, which is good for the planet. So why egg proteins? So as you all know, eggs are, they provide a very good balanced source of protein, of course. They also have an incredible amount of functionality. And if you look at egg white, it is simply the protein and water. And what Clara Foods is doing is taking the protein and making that using the technology. And there is a plethora of applications that you can use this in. Just to showcase, if you look at this figure here, each of those circles might represent the different proteins that are present in egg. And they individually or collectively give various multiple functionalities. So it has very good foaming properties. As you know, you can beat up the egg white. That gives aeration, whipping. It also makes your meringues and your cakes, quite aerated. The gelation ability helps with also some of the bindings and coatings, which are really helpful in many applications in food. So you can actually take individual proteins, you can actually then make them using the technology and then use it at proportions that may be not even heard of at this point of time. So that is the sort of idea behind this. So looking at how do we actually make this? So we make the actual animal proteins, but using precision fermentation. So if you look at egg protein, traditionally the chicken lays the egg, and then you can either break open the egg and use it or dry it into egg powder and use it in all your different applications. What Clara Foods does is uses the ability to take the DNA and it's very widely studied. Every protein is made by its own specific DNA. You can buy this DNA. So we buy the DNA from DNA sequencing companies. And then our strain engineers use technology that's been there for a long time, which is very safe. They insert the DNA into yeast. The yeast we use is FDA approved, generally recognized as safe yeast. And just by feeding the yeast with sugar and some nutrients in bioreactors, we grow them, and these yeast secrete the protein into the fermenters. And then once the fermentation is complete, we remove the yeast and we are left with the protein in solution. And that is then purified and dried to give us the protein powder. So using this technology, we are able to make the very same animal protein, but in a more cleaner and sustainable fashion. We also are able to partner with big fermentation giants such as AB and Bev, who have been doing this for a long time, and so be able to scale this technology up and actually produce in the quantities that would need to be done to make this available at the right price points. And for the global distribution system, we've partnered with a global giant like Ingredion, and that enables us to reach out this protein to the different parts of the world. And then we also work in partnership and closely with the end-use consumer businesses to help with the application as well for these proteins. So just a few examples of what we have out there. So our very first protein was actually Porcine Pepsin, made using the precision fermentation. And this was the world's very first kosher halal porcine pepsin. And we tried this out to test the versatility of our platform. So can we make other proteins other than egg protein? And yes, we can. So the technology platform itself is quite robust. And currently we are commercializing this. And, it has the same activity and it's identical to that of porcine pepsin, but made using yeast. We're also making soluble egg white protein. Now, this particular protein actually in the egg white only constitutes less than 1% of the total protein. So if you were to make this using eggs, you'd have to break open many eggs, and the extraction process itself is laborious, and a kilogram of this protein is going to cost a lot, around $10,000. Whereas using precision fermentation, we are able to do this at cost and also make it sustainably. The beauty of this protein over here, as you can see, it's very soluble, very transparent compared to other proteins that are available at this point of time. And lastly, we're also very excited to be working on the all-purpose egg replacer, which has the foaming gelation functionalities, which are highly sought after to make delicious cakes and other products that we all like. And we really look forward to bringing this technology and make use of this to make the real animal proteins that are at right quality and the functionality that we have as well. So thank you all for listening, and thank you to the organizers for giving us this opportunity to share.
You're very welcome, Kritika. And now we will do a little question session with the speakers. So first, Kritika, maybe I can ask you, you're now also saying that this technology, precision fermentation, you have developed, where do you see that being used in other categories or in other food products? Where do you see the next big potential, if you could say that?
So the platform itself is quite robust. So you can make animal proteins. You can also make plant proteins with it. So as long as you're able to engineer a safe strain organism with the DNA, and you're able to scale it up. So those are the main challenges. Scale it up safely, and then you'll be able to do. And then, of course, the next challenge is regulatory. But in the US, there is a lot of openness about this technology. And there are also set ways in which you can prove the safety of this product. So, and there's already a lot of uptake for this technology as well. So.
Great. That sounds very interesting, and I'm so much looking forward to follow this technology, because I'm sure this about fermented proteins is going to take up a lot of the space that's also talked very much about here in Denmark. And if you out there have a question, please just use the chat function and we'll bring it into the panel here. We have already received one question out there and also some on email, so we'll go through them. So maybe David, you can comment on this question, which is about the organic part of plant-based food products. It says right now that the 25% of plant-based alternative in the US are organic, where in Denmark, 65% of the products are organic. Maybe you want to comment on this and where do you see the potential here?
Sure. So thank you so much, Paul. I saw your question a few days ago comment about this on LinkedIn, and certainly there is some overlap between those consumers who want things to be organic and those who want things to be plant-based. However, I think it's important to note that demand for organic in the United States is significantly lower than in Denmark and the rest of the European Union. Whether good or bad, American consumers are not as concerned about the use of pesticides in agriculture, and are much more price sensitive when it comes to the difference between organic and conventional, or what we call conventional for whatever reason. It's a strange way to define using chemicals in farming. However, the other thing to note is that the price differential, at least in the products that we've seen, the price differential between organic and non-organic sources for a lot of the ingredients that form the bulk proteins or other base ingredients in plant-based products can be so significant that it can really price out already price-sensitive consumers. While I am supportive of organic as a mission, I am concerned that a focus on increasing organic as a priority would actually decrease the openness of reachable but not convinced consumers to take the plunge. As an example, organic cashews make up a significant portion of the base ingredients in many plant-based cheeses. Organic cashews can cost more than double the price of conventional. And we're already looking at cashew cheeses being $6, $10, $15, $20 a piece for 6 ounces. So roughly, I guess that's a quarter of a kilogram. I don't know. I'm not very, 250 grams, something like that. So the price sensitivity to consumers for that would be very high. And they're already not willing to buy those products en masse at the price they're at. So doubling the price would be impossible when cashews make up over 90% of the net weight of those products. So I support the mission. I think I'd like to see American consumers move in that direction, but it's unlikely in the near future, and it could be cost prohibitive to the movement. Also, there's actually a big opposition in the form of the industry and the consumer community actually going much more focused on non-genetically modified rather than organic. And so if you look at Whole Foods, for example, since the Amazon acquisition, Whole Foods has decreased their percentage of organic products significantly and has made a commitment to be much more focused on non-GMO. In fact, they've passed a policy that by January 2022, every single product must either be certified as non-genetically modified or must put on their label that they may include genetically modified ingredients. They represent 50% of all sales in the natural channel in the US. So that kind of move is really a major statement, a major vote for non-GMO over organic, for better or worse. And so I do believe that we're heading in the opposite direction in terms of businesses and consumers prioritizing organic.
All right, thank you so much, David. I know it's time now, but we just hope you have 2-3 minutes to spare, since we were a little bit late. There's a question for you, Zach, which we got via email. What category of plant-based food has the greatest potential at the moment, and where do you see the future market potential?
Well, there is a lot of potential in pretty much every category, in the sense that it's still a very wide open space, and there's still an enormous amount of innovation that needs to be had. I will double underline David's point about plant-based seafood being a very neglected space or category for alternatives. I'll certainly highlight too that what I would say that like the most potential, or what would unlock the greatest amount of demand, is any innovations that really improve the taste and sensory attributes of different product categories, as well as, of course, lower the price. And so the things that I suppose come to mind for me aren't even necessarily products so much as they are services, new forms of equipment that make texture structuring products better, or new types of ingredients and ingredient processing tools and technologies that enable us to source more biodiverse inputs for these products and improve and just find ways to essentially move beyond the existing commodities that we're reliant on. So those are the areas that feel like the highest impact for me, that if we're looking for a step change that really unlocks a lot of demand, we've got to get that price down and we've got to improve the sensory attributes. And those are the technologies I suppose.
Perfect, thank you so much.
If I may, I would also suggest that we've seen so much focus on burgers and milk, and every other form of meat and dairy is really where there is massive opportunity, particularly when it comes to the delta or difference between consumer demand and consumer satisfaction. So as an example, 30% of American households bought plant-based yogurt last year, but plant-based yogurts still represent this very low single digits in terms of sales of yogurts, because there's a very big lack of satisfaction sensory side. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And deli meats, anything that is meat or dairy that is not hamburgers or milk is a huge opportunity.
Perfect. That's a great comment, David. And thank you so much. We have a final presentation. Well, it was short and sweet. It was my presentation, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go to my main point. If you just quickly can do the presentation mode here. There's one thing I really want to say to the Danish companies who managed to switch platform. And it's going to, hopefully no more problems. Yes, so I'm just going to run through the slide and go over to this one, which is that we offer free services for small and medium-sized companies and startup and scale-ups. We have different solutions for free services, and that's to make sure that you are able to, export and have opportunities while we have a new world, which is COVID-19. And then finally, how to get in contact with us. You can go to the website and reach out to the Global Response team or email us. And you can reach out to me personally or Helle for that sake. And we will make sure that you are getting contact with the right people in both of our organizations. And finally, thank you so much for your time and all of you that again switched over. We are very thankful for our US speakers, both on the East Coast and West Coast. So thank you so much for joining, and thank you to all the participants.
Indeed, and I'm sure I'm grateful to hear Zach and David talking about new food categories, but also ingredients and technology, because it's definitely something we're strong at here in Denmark. And so please also let us know some of the Danish companies if you want to get in closer touch with either Zach, David, or Kita, and then we will set up and we can support you set up a one-on-one meeting, and also likewise, because I'm sure there's a lot of great potential between the Danish and the US market. So let's foster this collaboration and see where it can take us. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining today with your insights, comments, or questions. And we hope to see you soon, and stay safe.